Welcome back to Wellspa, where we explore the inner work that changes our mind, our perspective, and inspire us at the same time. Today, we are talking about classism, not just what it is, but how it quietly shapes the world around us and within us. Welcome to Unequal Grounds, a Wellspa original exploring the deep rooted structures of inequalities and what it actually takes to dismantle them. And today we begin with many things. We'll begin with the word classism. I have titled this episode Invisible Lines, the quiet power of classism. We often think of class, as a financial label, the rich, the poor, the middle class. But classism is deeper than money. It is, a systemic favoring of those with more wealth, more education, more connection, and sometimes not so subtle, devaluing those with less connection, less, even in marriage, even in relationships. But here's the tricky part, it's not just out there. Classism lives in the assumption we make, the language we speak, the and even the jobs we praise or ignore. If you'd agree with me, if you've got two friends, one is a tech savvy and the other is a cleaner in a bank, you would want to incline more to that of the tech savvy because you think that would increase your level in the society, and you tend to consciously or unconsciously ignore that of your cleaner friend because whatever he or she says would not hold ground compared to that your friend that is a tech savvy. Now that is a subtle way of classism. So what is class? Class is, one of those words we all know but rarely stop to define. We've got the upper class, we've got the working class, and we've got the middle class, and we use them without much thought. But class is more than a tax bracket. It's about access, it's about expectation, it's about belonging. And classism, that's the quiet force that tells us who is worthy and who is not. And I want you to understand that classism is not just about exclusion, it's about value. People from lower classes are often seen as less capable and less intelligent. And that belief, even when unspoken, affects hiring processes, affect healthcare decisions, affect school policies, affect even when the police wants to make an arrest, and many more. So let's pause for a moment. Have you ever made an assumption based on someone's job, based on someone's accent, the way they dress, the way they look, even the churches they attend, and the phones they carry? So let's bring it down to the use of phones. Most individuals rarely speak to individuals who uses Android phones. It's the mentality of they are not on your level. Imagine someone looking down on someone that uses a Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus and you are using an iPhone 13 because you think the person using the Samsung is using an Android phone. If you think about it deeply, it doesn't really make sense. And that is part of dismantling classism, which we I want to talk about in this episode. Because dismantling classism actually means acknowledging our internalized belief and then actively choosing curiosity over judgment. I want you to also understand that classism thrives in silence. So let's speak, let's listen, let's act, not from guilt, but from hope. Because when we see the humanity in each other, not just the resumes, the homes, or the paychecks, or the cars we drive, or the political connections we have, we'll begin to build something bigger than class. We'll build a community. Let me give you an example. So there was this boy named Philip. Philip was 11 years old when he stopped bringing lunch to school, high school. Not because he was not hungry, but because his classmates would laugh at his peanut butter sandwich wrapped in reused foil. The other kids had some boxes, sparkling waters they've gotten from Marks and Spencer's, they've gotten from Waitrose. And then Philip had what he could afford. Philip actually had what his parents could afford. That story is not quite unique. Whether it's clothing, speech patterns, or where you went to college, classism policies that are acceptable and shames those who don't match to the scripts. Now, this is how classism starts. It starts young. Kids as early as 5 or 6, classism actually starts young. Kids, as you might argue, that it's being taught, or they've seen their parents do the same, maybe to the maids, or do the same to their aunties and uncles. But from my studies and findings, I classism actually starts young. Kids as early as 5 or 6 begin to notice who has the cool backpack, the new shoes, the right snacks, and slowly messages sets in. Some people have more, and if you don't have, maybe you're worthless. Now, classism doesn't just hurt people financially, it affects their mental health. Children and adults who grow up facing class-based judgment often carry shame. I think there was some write-ups on Twitter where people were sharing their experiences on classism, and to tell you that it is actually real. They carry shame about what they can or cannot afford. Now, anxiety around social situations where they feel they don't fit in, and you begin to experience imposter syndrome in academy or professional space, or even when you hang out with your friends, and this pushes you to do things that you were not supposed to do. And that is where the power of contentment comes into play. Depression from being excluded. Yes, you can get depressed from being excluded, underestimated, or judged, not for who they are, but for what they have. Even upward mobility doesn't erase it. People who have made it often talk about feeling like outsiders. They still try to code switch, still hiding parts of themselves. Now, I want you to understand that classism leaves emotional bruises long after the financial ones fade. So, why don't you ask yourself this question? When did I first become aware of money differences, connections? Have I ever felt less than in a room because of what I wore, what I earned, how I speak, or the people I knew? Have I ever judged someone who didn't have the same advantages as I did? Now, there's no shame in what we uncover, only clarity, and clarity needs to go. So I want us to name it. Language matters. Start noticing how class shows up in media, in conversation, in humor. Call it whatever it is, not luck, not laziness, but a structural inequality. So stay curious. So there's something you could do. Instead of judging choices, ask what's their context. Not everyone starts the race at the same time. So use power. If you have access, share it, mentor, advocate, speak up when policies ignore the most vulnerable. We have this mentality of saying, it's not me, it's not my turn, so it's not going to get to me. That is the funny thing about life. When it comes knocking on your doorstep, no one will be there to save you. So you have to speak up when you see someone going through classism. You have to speak up when policies ignore the most vulnerable. You have to speak up when policies ignore the people that don't have access to power, because solidarity is louder than charity. Now, I want you to understand that classism isn't about shame. It's not about shame. It's about awareness. And with awareness comes the power of change. And at WellSpa, we believe in growth that includes everyone, not just the ones who could always afford it. And thank you for listening. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with someone you trust. Start a conversation, ask a question, and that is how change begins. Don't forget to like, share, click on the follow button, and subscribe. Thank you and have a lovely day. Bye bye.